Joining us now to talk more about these developments, we have Republican Congressman Rich McCormick of Georgia. Thank you so much for joining us in studio. We really appreciate it.
Good to be with you. Thanks.
So the president said he doesn't know when asked if everyone in the U.S. deserves due process and if he needs to uphold the Constitution. Does that concern you?
No, I don't think the president ever inferred that he didn't want to uphold the Constitution of the United States. He swore that oath when he took office. He said very specifically, like, I got great lawyers. I'm going to make sure that we agree with the Supreme Court ruling, which means that the Supreme Court ruling, their entire job is to make sure that something's constitutional. When they rule on it and they say it is or isn't constitutional, they will abide by that, which means he basically said, we'll follow whatever they deem is constitutional.
Isn't the Constitution constitutional, though? I mean, he was being asked about the Constitution, not the interpretation of the Constitution.
Sure, but the Constitution, just like the Bible, a lot of people like to interpret, including lawyers, especially lawyers. As a matter of fact, we've seen that very frustratingly applied historically. But that's why we have lawyers. That's why we have debates. That's why we have constitutional lawyers that go before the Supreme Court who are the best in the business and actually argue things in front of some of the best lawmakers and law interpreters of the nation. That's what they're supposed to be. And when they decide what is constitutional, then the president will abide by that. He promised that.
Do you believe that everyone who is here in the U.S., citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process?
They do. They do. And I think, once again, when we get back to the Garcia, the very, very famous Garcia case, he went before a trial twice, not once, not twice, but twice. And then after that, if he came back to the United States, he was supposed to be deported regardless. And if he came back to the United States, he would go before habeas. And then you'd have to determine, does he still have the threat that kept him from being deported back to El Salvador, his home of origin?
But back to
do
you believe the president should uphold the Constitution?
Of course.
See, those are pretty easy questions for you to answer. You're also not a lawyer, I would mention.
I'm a doctor, that's correct.
That's right. Someone obviously of high education, but these were not particularly difficult questions for you to answer. Why is it hard for the president to answer these questions? Should it be hard for the president to answer what are pretty basic questions?
Well, I thought he did. As a matter of fact, if you think about how many interviews he takes and how much he publicly speaks, it's pretty amazing. I know that I'd make a lot of gaffes, and I'm not calling this a gaffe, but I'm just saying that if he's saying that he's going to have his lawyers talk to Supreme Court, argue a case before the Supreme Court, whatever the Supreme Court says is constitutional, he's going to abide by. I think that's saying he's going to abide by the Constitution.
He was asked very clear questions about whether he believes that everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process and if he should uphold the Constitution. You took an oath. You say he took an oath. You took an oath when you joined the Marine Corps. You took an oath when you were sworn into Congress, and I suspect you remember what you swore to support and or defend when you took that oath.
I've given the oath as well as taken it. I know
and that was, what did you swear?
To support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, both foreign and domestic.
Again, not a difficult question for you to answer, which is something that maybe gives people confidence when they hear you saying, repeating what you swore an oath to. On tariffs, I want to talk about tariffs because I know this is really concerning too to your constituents, and all Americans are looking at this policy and how it's affecting them. President Trump told Kristen Welker on Meet the Press that he'll lower tariffs against China at some point because otherwise you could never do business with them. How long can the U.S. afford to wait for that point?
Well, I think the good news is right now everything's not changed. I mean, he's put a 90-day hiatus on making a decision. Meanwhile, they're making out a lot of individual negotiations between countries. Over 70, I think over 100 now. 70 of them, I know for a fact, have come out and said, let's have 0-0 tariffs. That's the best case scenario the United States has ever had, in my lifetime at least, in your lifetime certainly. That would be a great win, and I didn't think he could get that done. I was actually like, wow, this is a game of chicken. Let's see how it works out. But this could work out great. Now, the question is, how is China going to react to the tariffs? And what is the end result going to happen with a country that supplies a lot of meaningful things, not just batteries, but actually medications that we use, personal protection, things that we could have maybe produced other places, but we don't have that capacity right now, and there would be a gap, and there would be some hardship if we're not careful. So I think he's a smart guy. I think he's looking at deliberately at what he's going to do going forward, but this could have real benefits to us going forward.
There may be discussions. There are no deals yet. We have to be clear about that. So that's still obviously something that we're waiting for. So how much time do you think we have? You're talking about hardship.
Sure.
That's kind of vague. How much time does the U.S. have that it can afford to endure that kind of economic pain?
Well, the nice thing is the stock market is all hypothetical, right? It's going to bounce up and down based on people projecting what might happen. The only thing I'm worried about right now is the backlog of orders, because people are waiting to make orders. That's going to create an accordion effect in the economy, which could create some minor inflation, which is going to be adjusted over time. But we have about another 60 days. And I think, once again, if these come out to 0-0 tariffs, wow, what a boom that's going to be for us. What a benefit that's going to be for exports. And it's not going to affect our import tariffs because we're going to have 0-0 if that's the case. Now, the question is it going to have a 10% across the board? Is there going to be commodity tariffs of 25% on steel and aluminum? There are some things that could cause some inflationary policies, but that's yet to be seen.
In the near term, you're seeing prices already up at Amazon, Walmart, and Wayfair. Different reporting analyses looking at between 1 and some odd percent up to 4% on some of these retailers, which is an amount that certainly Americans, they registered their complaints at the ballot box. Sure. That they found unsatisfactory, and Republicans certainly found unsatisfactory when it was due to inflation. So knowing that we're already seeing some of those costs, what are you hearing from your constituents, and why is that tolerable?
I think people are waiting to see what's going to happen. It's been 1 month. If we end up with 0-0 tariffs, we're actually going to end up with cheaper prices. That'd be phenomenal, because a lot of things, remember when we import from India, 2 to 3% tariffs on imports. Same thing with China. We have some import tariffs on them too. This could actually result in cheaper prices overall. That's right now, the only thing that's causing the increase in prices is the ordering system, not the tariffs themselves, because we don't have new tariffs right now.
So you're expecting things to be cheaper coming out of this in such a way that your constituents will see economic relief?
That would be ideal, and I think that's the goal, is to open up markets overseas. And at the same time, the question is, how are we going to generate revenue? How are we going to get the tariffs back when it comes to the amount of revenue it generates both here and abroad?
Well, you can't do both.
That's correct. And so that's what's going to be interesting to see how they negotiate that.
All right. Yeah, these are mutually exclusive. If they're not in place, they're not generating revenue. Congressman McCormick, it's great to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.